So magandang araw mga kapwa siyentista at welcome sa Behind the Science podcast kung saan kakausapin natin ang ating mga scientists para ibahagi hindi lang ang mga resulta ng pag-aaral nila kundi pati na rin ang mga behind the scenes or behind the science stories nito. Simula sa kung paano nila ito naisipan gawin hanggang sa na-publish na nila ito. Our guest is a climatologist and he has been working with Pag-asa since 2013. He obtained his PhD in marine meteorology from Jeju National University in Korea. He also holds a master's in meteorology and a bachelor's in geography from UP Diliman. Currently, he is also an adjunct researcher at the Typhoon Research Center in Jeju City, South Korea, and is a technical member of the World Climate Research Program Asian Australian Monsoon Working Group. He is also a member of several professional organizations, and he is the section head in Meteorology and Oceanography, Division of Earth and Space Sciences in the National Research Council of the Philippines. And currently, he is also the president of the Philippine Meteorological Society Incorporated, which is the professional organization of meteorologists in the country. So without further ado, let's all welcome Dr. Joseph Vasconcillo.
Maraming salamat, Paul. Magandang hapon sa ating mga tagapakinig. Masaya ako ngayong araw na to kasi gaya ng nabanggit ko kay Paul sa mga nakalipas na pag-uusap namin, I am very happy that there's now an increasing platform for Filipino scientists to share their scientific findings. Kasi kung babalikan natin yung mga dati, Paul, kung maalala mo, kailangan pumunta ka pa sa library para magbasa ng mga research articles, and then rarely you can find social media platforms that we could be able to share our science. And I'm very much happy that we are now getting more diverse as compared before. So maraming salamat sa invitation, Paul.
Tsaka in addition to that, sir, kakatapos lang din ng DOST Bantog Awards kagabi.
Tama, oo. Yung sa science communication natin. I think it is one of the legacies ng ating current secretary that apart from creating our sciences, maganda na hindi siya natatapos doon. Dapat end-to-end tayo. So dapat nakakarating doon sa patutunguhan. It's science for the people na. So we communicate our science. Lagi namin pinag-uusapan ito. If you cannot effectively communicate your science, then perhaps there is a failure along the way. A perfect science, a good science, is a science that is being communicated and being applied for the people.
Ayun. So, ngayon, ang pag-uusapan natin, very interesting to na paper ni sir. Kasi I think karamihan sa mga audience natin within the past few years napapansin natin to yung maulan na Pasko. So ngayon titingnan natin ang science behind sa mga maulan na Pasko na naranasan natin. Pero bago tayo pupunta doon, ayan, kilalanin muna natin ng mas maigi ang ating guest for today. So sir, when did you realize na gusto niyo maging isang scientist?
Nako, maraming dekada na yung pinagdaanan natin doon. Nakakatuwa. Habang kung iisipin ko yan, hindi ko alam kung saan exactly ako naging interested doon sa science sector. But thinking out loud, it is because of the Hekasi. If you're familiar with the subject na Hekasi, meron kami ng grade school niyan, Geographia, Kasaysayan, at Civica. It is not directly related to science, but the geography, yung Geographia na yon, I was so fascinated by the different places, how those different places interact with the society, how a particular landscape, say for example, Bohol. So Bohol is a geological monument. And then how that particular geological monument, Chocolate Hills sa Bohol, are actually interacting with that of the tourism sector in Bohol. So then doon yung geography. So I think thinking out loud, doon nagsimula yung aking interest sa science. And then eventually, when I wanted to visit many places, laging binabanggit din yung climate. So halimbawa, iba yung klima dito sa lugar na to, iba yung klima doon sa lugar na yun. I think lumaki na siya ng lumaki hanggang sa naging interested na ako sa climate, naging interested na ako sa meteorology, and by virtue of that, naging interested na rin ako sa climate change.
Pero yung course nyo, sir, di ba undergrad nyo, geography? So bakit hindi
Geography.
kayo nag-focus agad sa climate? Nag-geography muna kayo. And then,
Actually, iniisip ko yan eh. Okay. Kung ikakwento ko na lang ng upkat, may upkat tayo, and then during our time, merong quota, non-quota. So sinasabi nila doon, na mas madali ka daw makakapasa kapag non-quota ka, quota. So yung iniisip ko, na sige, apply ako in geography kasi I'm really interested in exploring different places. Actually, yung second choice ko that time was geology. So geography and geology. So really the time earth science na yung gusto ko. And then of course, kung pumasa ka na dun sa first choice mo, eventually you will not get selected in the second choice. So luckily and fortunately, I was selected in geography. So yun na, doon na lumaki. And then, habang nagkakwento ako, no, habang nasa geography ako, may climatology doon na subject. So eventually, lumaki yung interest ko sa climatology. It grew. And then, even my professor in climatology at that time, naging boss ko eventually dito sa Pag-asa.
ay, speaking about climatology pala, sir. Kasi nakikita ko yung background niya, yung climate map ng Philippines.
Yes, oo. Tama.
Curious ako,
Nag-update
anong
ako
naging
niyan.
basis niyan? Anong naging basis para
Okay.
paghati-hati?
Well, it's more than 100 years approach. Ginawa siya ni Father Coronas, SJ, part siya ng Manila Observatory during that time. And from his observation from 1902 to 1906, he realized na merong distinct seasonal pattern doon sa rainfall sa mga stations during that time. So, ginawa niya, nagkaroon tayo ng Coronas classification. So, yun na yung una niyang ginawa. It was published in 1908. Nahirapan niya akong hanapin yun eh. And then eventually, in 1984, so suffice to say, almost 80 years after, minodify siya ni Quintanar, ni Dr. Quintanar. So nagkaroon tayo ng modified Coronas classification. Exactly, nakikita nyo sa likod, yun yung ina-update natin ngayon. Based naman doon sa, technically it's the same thing, but it's different in how they treat the central tendency. Kasi kay Quintanar, simple average, mean. And then kay Quintanar, he used the modal approach. Yun lang naman pinagbago, kaya modified Coronas classification. And as we speak, I'm trying to update yung climate map natin din sa likod. Kasi 2014 pa siya, so 10 years ago pa yung huling mapa natin.
Bali, over the years, sir, parang in-expect nyo siya na magbago dahil sa climate change? Ganun ba yan?
In-expect natin kasi every 10 years, ina-update natin yung climate normal na tinatawag natin. So yung climate normal, that is the average of 10 consecutive years, meaning 30 years, 10 consecutive years. So every 10 years, nag-update siya. So suffice to say, kung nag-update yung average mo in the past 10 years, therefore nagbabago din yung climate map mo kasi 'di ba central tendency siya. So eventually ay baka posible may mga nagbago na doon sa lugar. It's not exactly climate change, but perhaps meron ng residual effect yung climate change. Although hindi natin siya masyado makikita kasi average na nga lang siya.
Pero yung mga exact na mga boundaries na yan, sir. For example, dito ako sa type 1, tapos dito sa type 2. Pag nakatayo ako sa type 1, maulan. Tapos pag tayo ko sa type 2, hindi na maulan. Ganun ba yan?
You're talking like a geologist right now. Tama naman yun. Actually, sinusundan lang natin yung terrain. Kasi usually meron tayo doon sa ulan, merong orographic na effect na tinatawag. Eventually, kapag yung hangin bumangga sa matataas na bundok, at dahil sobrang taas ng bundok, kapag humampas yung hangin na may dala ng ulan, hindi siya nakakatawid sa kabila. So on the average, ay doon sa hangganan, doon sa mga ridge ng bundok, sa hangganan ng mga bundok, hindi nakakatawid yung hangin may dalang ulan, kaya nagbabago yung klima doon sa kabila. Sa madaling salita, ito yung windward at saka leeward sa ating mga textbook. So ito yung nakaharap sa hangin, ito yung nakatago doon sa hangin. Kaya makikita mo halimbawa doon sa bundok natin sa type 1, binanggit mo yung hanging habagat, dahil sa sobrang taas halimbawa ng hanging habagat, kadalasan hindi siya nakakatawid patungo halimbawa sa Cagayan Valley. And then eventually iba yung klima sa Cagayan Valley. On the other side naman, yung hanging amihan, dahil mataas yung Sierra Madre mountain range, pag bumangga yung hangin na may kasamang pag-ulan, hindi ito makakatawid dun sa kabila. Kaya ang Cagayan Valley is really a distinct climate regime.
So parang yung mga bundok, well, ito yung analogy ni Sir BA dun sa first
Mhm.
episode. Parang mga hump sila sa kalsada. So ganun
Tama,
pala talaga
mga
yung
hump
purpose.
sila. Mga hump sila and then papalaki mo lang sila, magiging regional scale sila. Although marami pang pagbabago yun eh. Kasi kung mapapansin mo, bakit sa Mindanao iba yung climate type? Kung gagamitin lang natin yung analogy na yun, it would be simplistic, but it is correct. It is correct. But there are other regions in the country also that cannot be necessarily applicable dun sa analogy na yan. Doon sa Mindanao naman, generally, if you are aware, hindi ko alam kung makikita siya, pero if you are aware with that in Mindanao, mga linear systems naman yung nakaka-apekto dyan. Halimbawa, yung mga intertropical convergence zone natin, laging nandyan yan eh. ITCZ, it's a line, it's a belt of convective activities, rain belt, kumbaga. And then, lagi nandyan lang, nagta-fluctuate. Kaya yung description sa Mindanao, rainfall is generally more or less distributed throughout the year. So, kumbaga pantay-pantay nandiyan yung dami ng ulan. Ngayon, kung ibabalik natin sa mga nakalipas na taon, kung ganun pala yung pagbabago ng ulan sa Mindanao, bakit biglang dumarami yung mga bagyo ng mga nakalipas na taon? So, yun yung mga kadalasang itinatanong sa atin nung pag pumupunta tayo sa Mindanao, yung mga community, sabi nila, bakit po biglang dumami yung mga bagyo sa Mindanao, etc.
Speaking about sa mga ridge pala, sir, kasi nabanggit mo kanina yung Sierra Madre and Cordillera, kasi parang north-south yung trend niya, di ba? Tapos yung monsoon, pag ganun. What if yung orientation ng bundok mo, medyo parallel siya sa direction ng monsoon? Ano yung mangyayari?
Okay. Generally, kung halimbawa magiging parallel siya, wala ka magiging friction. So kung walang magkukos ng friction na yun, ang mangyayari ay tuloy-tuloy yung daloy ng ulan doon. So generally, parang siyang steak, no? If you cut along the grain ng steak natin, mas malambot. Parang ganun. So, ganun din yun. So, kapag along the grain, along the ridge line, tuloy-tuloy lang siya, walang friction. So, tuloy-tuloy lang yung habagat na yun. Yung pagdaloy nung hanging habagat ng monsoon natin. If that would cause a rainfall or heavier rainfall along that line, that is another question. Kasi, posible na kahit na pareho sila ng orientation, pero meron ka pa rin peaks and downs kasi meron peaks and dips yan. So kung meron mga peaks and dips, generally along those dips following that ridge line, posible magkaroon ka ng enhancement noong either a monsoon or any rain-bearing system. Classic example niyan, halimbawa, yung sa Bicol. Halimbawa, yung Bicol, kung mapapansin mo, meron kang volcanic, we're talking about geology here because you are an earth scientist. So may mga volcanic arc ka, volcanic chain sa Bicol, no? Coming, say, for example, from Legazpi, yung Mayon, all the way to Naga. So may mga volcanic chain ka, volcanic arc ka dyan. Kapag yung bagyo tumama doon, generally, sunod-sunod lang yan eh. Pero may ups and downs ka pa. So doon sa valley in between, nagkakaroon ka ng mga convective activities or enhancement ng rainfall. So, suffice to say, it would be simplistic kung halimbawa sa mga finer scale yung ating ganong analogy.
Ayun. So, going back pala, sir, sa dun sa life story niyo.
Naku, tawagin mo lang ang Tasyo. Okay lang, Tasyo.
Okay po. So, paano naman po kayo napunta sa sa Pag-asa? First job niyo po ba yan after graduation or meron pa previously?
Alright. That's a good question. First, kung halimbawang first job ko, hindi. Kung paano ako napunta sa Pag-asa, iba pang kwento. Sige, yung first job muna. I was really into science. My first job, nasa PHIVOLCS ako, by the way. So, my first job was in PHIVOLCS. Nag-engage ako dun sa Nationwide Tsunami Inundation Mapping Program ng PHIVOLCS few decades ago. Sabi na lang, few decades ago. And then after that, pumunta ako sa Marine Science. And then, pumunta rin ako sa Biodiversity Conservation because that's research. Eventually, kung halimbawa, for as long as you know your scientific method and you could be able to implement those scientific method kahit saan ka pa itapon eh. Alam mo yan.
Mm.
And then eventually pumunta ako sa hydrology. So nag-work din ako sa hydrology. And then sa geology din, yung mga fault finder din ako during that time. So, and then pumunta na ako ng Pag-asa. So yun yung susunod na tanong mo. Paano ako napunta sa Pag-asa? It's a funny story because I did not expect myself na mapupunta sa Pag-asa. It just so happened that during that time, may scholarship offering si DOST, yung Human Resources Development Program. And then they offered scholarships sa Pag-asa even for outsiders like me. I was not Pag-asa that time. So sige, green up ko yung opportunity kasi tax-free yung scholarship. So sabi ko during that time, malaki na yun. For struggling scientists like us, I think sige, kaya yan. So napunta ako sa meteorology because that time I was interested in climate change and the research funding for climate change, it's getting larger and it's getting traction during that time. Kasi naalala mo po ba yung mga ozone hole? Hindi
Ozone
na.
hole.
Yung mga ozone hole dati kasi may mga Montreal Protocol. Yun yung big issue that time. Ozone hole, acid
Alam
rain,
ko lang may ganun na news, pero
during
wala
that
na
time,
akong alam after that.
correct. Yun yung mga malalaking issue that time. The ozone hole, acid rain, and climate change, hindi pa masyado yun eh. But it's getting traction, more traction day by day. So sabi ko, okay, if I want research funding, I should learn more about climate change. And the closest that we have as regards to studying climate change, at least in the Philippines, is meteorology. And UP only offers meteorology, graduate studies in meteorology that time. So sabi ko, okay, may scholarship sa Pag-asa, and then may meteorology program si UP Diliman, si ISM. Then I grabbed the opportunity, and after that, nasa Pag-asa na ako kasi required ako mag-serve sa Pag-asa. And 11 years after, nasa Pag-asa pa rin ako.
Pero yung scholarship po na yan, available pa rin siya hanggang ngayon?
Available yung Human Resources Development Program. And of course, SEI is also offering that. Yung HRDP na pinag-uusapan natin, apparently it's for the employees of the DOST itself. And then nag-branch out siya. Eventually, si SEI, Science Education Institute, offers that scholarship para naman sa mga hindi DOST employees.
I think medyo alam na natin yung backstory ni Sir Tasio. Pag-usapan na natin yung paper niya. So ang title nito ay Recent Increase in the Occurrences of Christmas Typhoons in the Western North Pacific. So sir, can you briefly explain muna yung paper niyo in just one sentence?
One sentence. Sige, subukan natin. I think climatological evidence are indicating that there is a recent increase in the occurrences of Christmas typhoons in the Philippines.
Kapag sinabing Western North Pacific, sir, anong areas yung coverage nito? Anong mga countries?
Alright. That's a very good question. Usually, when we talk about basin, ang nakikita natin Palanggana at laging from the word basin itself, Palanggana. And in the context of the Philippines, whenever we think about basin, river basin siya. But we also have to think of the atmosphere as a fluid, as a fluid. So suffice to say, pwede ka rin magkaroon ng mas malaki pang Palanggana kaysa sa mga rivers natin. So yung Western North Pacific is one of the major basins in the world. So ang coverage niya is generally from 100 degrees east. So suffice to say, around sa Thailand hanggang international dateline 180 degrees east, and then sa baba from the equator all the way to 50 degrees north. So that's the Western North Pacific basin. And there are other basins in the world. So we have the Eastern North Pacific. So from the international dateline all the way to Central America. So pagtawid mo naman ng Central America, nandun yung North Atlantic Basin. And then meron kang South Atlantic Basin, and then meron kang South Pacific Basin, and then North Indian Ocean, South Indian Ocean. So suffice to say, you're just going to divide the major oceans into two, the North and the South. So magkakaroon ka ng mga major basins, except for the Pacific na sobrang laki, kaya hinati siya into Western North, and then Eastern North Pacific, and then the South Pacific.
So in a way, parang nagka-coincide din siya sa mga ocean basins.
Yes, ocean basin. Kasi because tropical cyclones and typhoons in general are marine meteorological systems. So they originate in the open ocean.
Ngayon sir, yung research niyo, paano nag-come up yung ganitong topic? Anong nagbigay ng idea sa inyo para gawin to?
That's a very good question. Kasi noong 2011, around that time, 2011, sunod-sunod yung mga bagyong pumasok sa Pilipinas. Nandiyan si Tropical Cyclone Pablo, si Sendong. Tapos lagi siya nababalita. And during that time, nag-aaral pa ako ng master's ko sa UP Diliman. Ang laki niyang balita kasi una, ang laki ng damage niya. Tapos pangalawa, ang damage and then casualties. And at the same time, it appeared na parang hindi tayo handa doon. Lalong-lalo na yung Mindanao, doon sa part noong pagdaan ng mga bagyo. And lastly, dumaan pa siya sa panahon ng Kapaskuhan. And you know, sa Philippines, lalo na pagpasok pa lang ng September 1, papasok na yung Kapaskuhan sa atin. We have the longest Christmas season in the world, September 1 all the way to siguro Christ the King, no? So parang January, sabi natin January. So sabi ko, bakit kaya nangyayari ito na parang may kakulangan dun sa paghahanda sa may bandang Mindanao and may kakulangan ng paghahanda sa mga panahon na kadalasan walang bagyo o tinatawag nating less active season. So doon na nag-come up yung research. We need to understand the less active typhoon season.
Pero yung ganitong research, sir, sinimulan niyo siya sa master's or during your PhD na?
The PhD itself na. Kasi yung master's ko, siya baka maraming nanonood sa atin na tagapakinig. In our master's program, medyo historical context lang may dalawang batches usually sa kumukuha ng meteorology, graduate studies in meteorology in the Philippines. Meron tayong tinatawag na pre-ondoy, meron tayong tinatawag na post-ondoy. Yung mga pre-ondoy ay sila na yung mga nandun sa ISM. Even pumasok si Ondoy. And then, nung pumasok na si Ondoy sa Pilipinas, tumaas yung interest sa meteorology. So, dumami din yung enrollment rate sa Philippines sa meteorology. So, isa ako dun sa mga pre-Ondoy. And during that time, ang interest ko ay generally about remote sensing. Remote sensing, evapotranspiration, etc., etc. But when I did my PhD, I thought of something that is so unique. Kasi ganun naman in PhD, we have to push the boundaries of science. You don't just apply the existing methodology, but you have to push the understanding of your science. And in my case, I thought of most of the studies in tropical cyclones, not only in the Philippines, not only in the Western North Pacific, I usually devoted on some main tropical cyclone season. Ang main tropical cyclone season natin sa Philippines at sa Western North Pacific is from June to November. Bihira yung mga study na makakapagbasa ka during the less active season. Bakit? Kasi kakaunti naman yung bilang ng mga bagyong yun So bakit ko pa siya pag-aaralan? So naisip ko, baka it is one of the reasons why tumaas yung damage and casualties because we don't understand this phenomenon. We only focus on those active months and less focus on the less active month. Kaya, ganito yung paghahanda natin. So therefore, we need to understand this phenomenon.
Ay, ang ganda ng emphasis niyo, sir, na pinili niyong aralin yung isang bagay na hindi pinapansin ng ibang mga tao. Kasi I think ngayon kasi parang usong-uso na may mga hype sa certain topics. Pero yung mga more basic or impactful na mga topics hindi masyadong napapansin.
That is true. Kaya ko siya pinag-aralan din. And doon na habang nag-aaral ako, nagbabasa ako ng mga archive kasi kakaunti nga lang yung pag-aaral. So, natagpuan ko in one of the review ng literature, past literature, meron ng Christmas typhoon noong 1908 pa. Si Father Corona din yung nag-describe sa kanya. So, tinatawag siyang Christmas typhoon Quantico. Noong 1908, dumaan siya sa Pilipinas. Tinawag siyang Christmas typhoon kasi dumaan siya December 24 sa Central Luzon. And it also brought a lot of damages. So, it is not something new, yung tawag na Christmas typhoon, but rather, baka kasi nag-focus nga tayo, tama ka, nagpo-focus tayo dun sa mas marami, when in fact, baka nagkakaroon tayo ng false sense of security. Diniscuss ko din sa paper na yun na baka isa sa mga reasons why we did not exactly prepare for these systems ay dahil may false sense of security. Una, Kapaskuhan. So, nasa holiday mood na tayo. Tapos, pangalawa, kakaunti lang naman yung bilang ng bagyo. Tapos, pangatlo, ay hindi natin naiintindihan itong mga to. So, kung babalikan natin, kung naiintindihan natin sila, bakit sila nangyayari, at makakapagbigay tayo ng tamang abiso, and therefore, makakapaghanda tayo. So, hindi lamang tayo nagpo-focus doon sa main typhoon season. At baka, para lang mabanggit ko na rin, baka malito yung mga tao kung bakit lagi kong sinasabing typhoon. Sa Philippines, sa Pag-asa, meron tayong 5 classification ng tropical cyclone. We have depression, tropical storm, severe tropical storm, typhoon, super typhoon, 5. Kasi sa Western North Pacific, ang tawag natin dyan typhoon. So in general, typhoon siya. In the American side, they call it the hurricane. In the Indian side, they call it the cyclone. So in general, tropical cyclone for me ay typhoon. All like us, siguro, we are trained in Japan, we are trained in Korea, we call it typhoon in general.
Pero pare-parehong phenomenon lang yun, sir.
Pare-pareho
Magkakaiba lang
sila
yung
tropical
pangalan.
cyclone.
Ayun. So dito naman, yung next question ko naman, sir, can you explain na yung mga results nyo?
Okay. Yung result ko, ito yung medyo komplikado, pero susubukan ko siyang ipaliwanag. Una, yung bakit dumami yung bagyo sa panahon ng Kapaskuhan. At dumami nga ba sa Pilipinas? Kasi yung unang tanong, Western or Pacific. Dumami yung mga nabuong bagyo sa panahon ng Kapaskuhan sa Western North Pacific, at kadalasan yung mga bagyong nabubuo na yon sa Western North Pacific ay dumadaan sa Pilipinas. So unahin natin, bakit dumami yung mga nabubuong bagyo? Nagkakaroon ng increased tropical cyclone development. It is because of the warmer sea surface temperature. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Kadalasan ng mga bagyo ay nabubuo sa gitna ng dagat, in the open ocean. And the warmer ocean surface fuels, o ito yung nagbibigay ng enerhiya sa mga bagyo para mabuo. Simplihan pa natin para mas madali. Kapag mas mainit yung tubig mo, nagkakaroon ka ng evaporation. Kapag nagkaroon ka ng evaporation, eventually magko-condense yan, it will form into clouds or convective activity. Technically, convective activity. And because malawak yung katubigan mo, yung karagatan mo, so mas marami kang kaulapan, and because of favorable environment, nagkakaroon ka ng bagyo in general. Okay? In the past years, yung karagatan natin ay mas mainit, bunsod doon tinatawag nating Central Pacific El Nino. Ibig sabihin, yung karagatan malapit sa Pilipinas ay mas mainit. So, dulot doon, nagkakaroon ng mas maraming kaulapan at nagkaroon ng mas maraming nabuong bagyo, tropical cyclone development. The next question is, bakit dumaan sa Pilipinas? So, nabuo na sila, paano sila dumaan sa Pilipinas? Kasi pwede naman nabuo sila, pero umiwas sila sa Pilipinas. Nag-recurve sila towards the north. Yung sagot doon is because of the enhancement or displacement, sabi ko na lang, westward displacement noong subtropical high natin. Naku, magiging technical na tayo. Pero yung subtropical high natin, it's like, iplihan na ulit natin. Paano ba? Ang bagyo ay low pressure. So, ang kabaliktaran nun, high pressure. So, low pressure ang bagyo, high pressure So, ang mangyayari niyan, iiwas yung low pressure mo dun sa high pressure. So, kapag lumakas ngayon yung high pressure mo at pumunta siya malapit sa may Pilipinas, ang gagawin nun, iiwas siya sa high pressure. Susundan niya
Okay.
lang yung mga kapare-pareho niyang low pressure. At dahil lumawak yung high pressure during that time, tumawid siya hanggang sa may Northern Luzon. Kung makikita niyo yung mapa dun sa likod, tumawid siya hanggang sa may Northern Luzon. So, anong mangyayari? Yung mga bagyo sasadsad papunta sa south. At dahil sumadsad sila pa south, kadalasan doon tatama yung bagyo. So, sinusundan ng track ng bagyo yung high pressure dun sa kanyang taas, sasadsyad siya paibaba, kaya dumama yung mga bagyong tumama ngayon sa Mindanao sa mga nakalipas na taon. Kung kailan, since 2011, dumami yung mga bagyong sumasadsad at tumatama o naglalandfall sa Mindanao.
Nabanggit mo sir yung yung main na dahilan bakit umiinit ay yung ENSO. Tama
Tama.
po ba? Pero dun sa paper nyo, nabanggit nyo rin yung PDO, yung Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Ano po yung anong pinagkaiba nung PDO at saka ENSO aside sa yung time scale nila, yung recurrence nila na
Actually, yun yung main difference na babanggitin ko sana. That's the time. So, si ENSO is usually interannual siya and it has a periodicity of, depende kapag El Nino or La Nina, but generally, I would say 2 to 7 years. So, 2 to 7 years, ibigay na natin yan. Whereas for the PDO, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, it has a variability o periodicity, paulit-ulit lang siya na every 11 years, so decade siya. Pag sinabi pala nating oscillation, ibig sabihin nun, mula sa original initial point, iikot siya at babalik ulit siya doon sa kanyang initial point, nag-oscillate siya. So kaya yung El Nino Oscillation, Southern Oscillation, nag-oscillate siya, ganun din yung PDO. Anong pinagkaiba nun? Ang pinagkaiba is basically nasaan yung bahagi ng karagatan na nagkakaroon ng mas mainit o mas malamig na temperatura. Yung El Nino Southern Oscillation, may tatlong bahagi. Yugto, ako sana. No? May tatlong phases o yugto. El Nino, we are familiar with that. La Nina and then the neutral phase. Kapag El Nino, ibig sabihin nito, mas mainit yung karagatan doon sa gitnang Pasipiko, karagatang Pasipiko. Kapag La Nina, mas malamig yung karagatan sa gitna at silang karagatang Pasipiko. Pag neutral, wala masyadong pagbabago. For the PDO now, it is mostly observed in the North Pacific. So yung isa nandun sa equator, yung PDO nandun sa gitnang Pacific. Sa North Pacific ako sana. Again, sa North Pacific. 20 degrees north pataas. Okay. Kapag uminit yung PDO natin, ang nangyayari, nandun ngayon yung mga convective activity. At kapag nandun yung mga convective activities, eventually pupunta yan sa iba't ibang bahagi ng Pacific Ocean. So suffice to say, we also found out that the variability o yung pabago-bagong characteristics ng ating PDO is also related with that of the occurrences of Christmas typhoon. Bakit? Kasi yung Siberian high tuloy, yung Western or Pacific subtropical high natin is also tied with that of the Pacific decadal oscillation. Itatawid ko na lang, Paul, ang dami kong kwento. Pwede mo akong putulin.
Sige po. Ay, siguro lang po.
Makwento talaga ako. Doon ko na-realize, when I was studying this, at least for our listeners, doon ko na-realize na the study of climate is really complicated. It would be myopic for us to understand only what's happening in the Philippines because everything is connected to each other. Everything is interconnected. So you have to understand na kung ano nangyayari dito sa lugar na to, it must be connected with something else. Yun yung tinatawag nating teleconnection in climatology. So, doon ko napagtagni-tagni na, okay, hindi lang pala siya dahil ENSO lang. Meron ding tinatawag na PDO, etc., etc. And everything that is happening in the other places, especially if it is a large-scale anomaly o may malawakang pagbabago, posible magkaroon siya ng epekto doon sa Pilipinas. Doon na nagsimula yung interest ko sa Christmas typhoon.
Ay, with that pala sir, may dalawang follow-up question ako dyan. Kasi yung tiningnan nyo, yung bagyo from 2011 up to, kailan ba yun? 2020 po ba yan?
2018. Actually, doon sa paper 2018 yan.
18. Tapos sabi nyo, yung Christmas typhoon during that time period ay associated sa ENSO and PDO. So, sa next decade, do we expect na walang Christmas typhoon kasi parang lumipas na yung periodicity ng PDO at ENSO?
Tama. That is the very reason why kung babalikan natin yung sinabi mo kanina, Paul, is it really related to climate change? We don't know. Because PDO is a natural mode of variability. So it is not externally forced. Meaning pag externally forced, ito yung mga anthropogenic forcings. Okay? So internal pala siya. So kung internal siya, it is possible na meron kang recent increase and then eventually, posible siyang bumaba. Which only highlight the fact na kailangan natin maintindihan na baka hindi talaga siya climate change. It is a naturally occurring variability, and therefore, kaya natin siyang paghandaan, di ba? Kasi if it is outside of our realm, say for example, if it is climate change, then therefore it must be outside of our natural course, baka mahihirapan tayo. But if it is a variable, it is a variability, dapat natin siyang paghandaan kasi eventually babalik na naman siya.
Ayan sir. So, yung next question ko, nasubukan niyo po bang extend yung anong tawag nito? Yung data na inanalyze nyo, sinubukan nyo ba siyang i-extend further back? Like, tingnan nyo from 1950s up to present kung nakikita nyo yung gano'n na periodicity.
That is a very good question din actually. Nagsimula tayo ng 1984 up to 2018 doon sa analysis natin. Because of prior to there was a study, sabi ko na lang, there is a study saying that the reliable period of tropical cyclone observation in the Western North Pacific begins in 1984. Prior to that, unreliable na yung observations natin. Bakit? Kasi nagre-rely tayo sa mga surface observation, meaning to say sa mga station natin, sa mga station natin. And we do not exactly have observations in the open ocean during that time. So therefore, we cannot really accurately validate kung tama yung mga observations natin prior to 1984. How do we know if the observations from 1984 onwards are reliable? Because of satellite data. So pumasok na yung satellite period. And therefore, mas ginagamit natin yung satellite period. So I don't necessarily recommend backtracking yung analysis natin prior to 1984 because of that unreliability. But we can do that. Kung may mga gustong mag-aral ng tropical cyclones, I could recommend na pag-aralan nyo halimbawa yung mga naglandfall na. Kasi meron kang surface observation dyan. So you can validate those data. But if you are studying tropical cyclones while they are in the open ocean, then you really have to be cautious in analyzing your data. If you cannot validate that with remotely sensed data or say for example, reconnaissance, may mga flight through ka, then therefore you really have to be careful. Going back to your question, ang dami kong paliwanag. Going back to your question, I did not do that because of the unreliability of data. Kasi karamihan sila nagaling ng dagat. Kung in-extend ko yung analysis ko after 2018, yes, I extended my analysis up to 2022 kasi there was a Christmas typhoon, another Christmas typhoon, Typhoon Odette. Kung maalala mo si Typhoon Rai, it was also a big tropical cyclone. So yes, it's still increasing pa rin yung trend until 2022. And then if the PDO will actually reverse its signal, then we're expecting magre-reverse din yung signal doon sa dami ng mga Christmas typhoon. How soon? That I don't know. Kasi hindi ko na pag-aralan yung lag Kung halimbawa, nag-reverse na yung signal PDO kung gaano kabilis yung kanyang pag-reverse ng signal.
Bali sa ganitong type ng study pala, sir, the only way na malalaman natin kung dahil ba siya sa natural na periodicity ng PDO or climate change, maghihintay pa tayo ng ilang dekada para may sapat na observations.
Yes,
For now, hindi
sapat na
talaga tayo
observation.
certain.
Or we could simulate it actually. We could actually create a climate model simulation. But bago ka tumawid doon sa climate model simulation na yun, sa mga modeling part natin, alamin muna natin yung basic. What's happening? What's exactly happening? So ito yung kinumulan ng Christmas typhoon because I think this is a pioneer study on the less active tropical cyclone season. And then eventually, pwede na siyang i-model.
Ayun. So ngayon, sir, discuss naman natin yung more on behind the scenes ng research. Paano nyo po na-fund yung study nyo?
Funding. That's a very good question. It was funded, of course, by our laboratory in Jeju, South Korea. So it's under the College of Ocean Sciences in Korea, of course, by my professor. It was also funded under a project of our professor, funded by the National Typhoon Center of South Korea, Gugka Typhoon Center in Korea.
So basically Korean talaga yung main na funding ng study na to. Ano basically yung pinagagastosan, sir, to do this study? Ano typically yung pinagagastosan ng ganong fund? Computer, equipment, anong klaseng?
Hindi. In my case, ako yung pinagkagastosan ng professor ko to do this kind of research. So kung anong, for example, yes, computing facilities. So kailangan ng computing facilities and access to data. During that time, limited din yung high resolution data. So I needed funds to access those data. So yun. And then of course, because it is observational analysis, so wala siya masyadong funding na ginagamit. So desktop is okay for as long as you have access to those data. So data talaga yung nagkagastusan during that time. And the publication fee, siguro.
Yan din question ko, sir. Magkano yung fee ng scientific reports?
Scientific reports, hindi ko maalala to, pero umabot yata ako ng mga $2,000. Ganun, nasa $2,000 US dollars. So medyo pricey siya for us. Kung halimbawa ordinary, not ordinary, but if I may say, kasi medyo mahal talaga siya. So kung wala kang funding source, siguro hindi ito yung pipiliin mong journal.
Okay, kasi parang nung nakita ko yung paper, scientific reports, yung unang pumasok agad sa isip ko, magkano yung publication fee sa Nature na journal.
That's true. But in at least sa university, sa Jeju Daehakyo, sa Jeju National University, ang first choice ng professor ko, ng research supervisor ko, is any journal in the Nature paper, in Nature paper group ako sana. So yun yung una kong target talaga. I submitted this in Nature, and then eventually they referred me in the scientific reports. So fortunately nakuha naman siya, the scientific reports.
Ito talaga yung mga experiences na parang malulula ka na lang pag nakita mo yung yung amount. Pag napunta ka sa first world na country, tapos yung institute na napuntahan mo, madaming pera. Nakakagulat yung kaya nilang gastasin sa mga ganitong publications.
Oo nga, sabi ko sana all, sana all. Which by the way, meron akong project entitled Sana All. Next year siya. Pero yes, mapapasana all ka na lang talaga. In our case, syempre hindi ko naman minamalit, kasi talagang malaking bagay din yung pondo na yun kung mailalaan sa mga ibang bagay. Pero mapapasana all ka na lang na you are correct. No, kaya nila maglaan ng ganong klase ng pondo for them to communicate their science. Kasi with the Nature paper group, ang laki noong readership nila, ang laki ng audience.
Oo.
So, ang daming magte-take up no kung ano man yung pinapublish mo. Yun yung impact factor actually. Impact factor is basically the readership, a metric for leadership. So, kaya nila mag-fund ng gano'n. So, I'm very thankful that you have this kind of platform, Paul. Na kung hindi man natin kaya dun sa mga medyo pricey na journal, at least we can communicate our science with these kinds of platforms.
Speaking of Paul, sir, medyo nagulat din ako na mas mura pala yung publication sa Nature compared sa AGU journals. Kasi yung AGU journals parang $2,900.
Depende. Oo. Halimbawa sa yung Nature mismo, umabot ng $6,000 yun eh. Hindi ako nagkakamali. $6,000. Sobrang mahal. Oo. Kaya nakakagulat siya. And even for the science, yung science umabot din doon ng ganong kamahal. Sabi ko, nako, baka malula din pati yung professor ko. So, pero okay lang sa kanila eh, i-fund yung mga ganun. Kasi eventually they get incentives naman in publishing in a high impact factor journal. Sana makuha din natin yung ganong culture. Although, meron diverging schools of thought eh. Kung napapansin mo na, there are some scientists who would say impact factor is not really a big deal in publishing, in communicating your science, while the other would say na it's really a big factor in communicating your science. Nandun ako sa gitna. Kailangan nating i-publish or i-communicate yung science natin at the very least, hindi sa predatory journal, sa mga ISI Scopus journals at the very least. Para lang may makapagbasa, makapag-share tayo ng science. Kasi pag hindi natin share yung science na yan, we keep it to ourselves, sayang. Sayang yung oras mo, sayang yung resources, at the same time, sayang kung may tatanggap ng science mo na yun. So it's really science for the people. We have to think about that.
Anong mga challenges, sir, yung na-experience mo in doing this study?
First, I think this research, I've done this research in my second year in my PhD journey. So personal challenges siya mostly because doon ko palang kinikilala yung writing style ko. Kasi previously, ang writing style ko ay for the Philippines. So yung mga na-publish ko for the Philippines, etc. So hindi ko pa alam kung paano magsulat na para sa wider audience. Hindi ko pa napipick up yung writing style. So it's very personal to me na balikan ko ng balikan yung papel para lang to make sure that this story is really intended for a wider audience and not a really myopic study. Pangalawa, siguro na challenge ko dito is that another personal. If I could not make it through this research, yung ginawa ko nun, therefore, baka hindi ako tumawid. Hindi ko na natapusin yung PhD ko. So, it's really a make or break for me. I think lahat din tayo dadaan dun sa, lalo na yung mga scientists natin, dumadaan tayo dun sa make or break natin, all or nothing. And good thing na natapos din itong research nito.
Nakaka-relate ako dun, sir, sa sinabi niyo na kailangan mo siyang isulat na on a wider audience. Kasi na-experience ko din yung unang paper ko for my PhD. Na-reject siya dahil napangitan yung editor sa pagsulat ko ng introduction. Dahil lang yun sa introduction, hindi niya tiningnan yung contents. Dahil lang sa introduction na hindi daw
reviewer number 2
parang
ba yan?
Global. Hindi, sir. Hindi nga umabot sa reviewer yung desk rejection.
Desktop, oo. That's
hindi niya nagustuhan yung introduction nila.
Yun yung mga dapat. Sige, sorry. Sige lang.
Ay, ang lang na medyo weird lang na experience kasi yung in-expect ko at least matingnan lang man yung contents. Tapos saka na siya mag-comment dun sa introduction. Pero yung ginawa niya reject agad nung nabasa yung introduction.
Oo. Kaya alam mo yung technique ko din dyan, Paul, if I may share sa mga kakilala natin. Kapag ini-invite tayo ng reviewer ng editor to review for their journal, I usually accept it. Kasi I treat this as kaliwaan tayo. So, nag-review ako para sa'yo, padaanin mo din ako dun sa review na yan. Natatandaan yan ng mga editors. Mandami kong pamahiin. Baka next time, pwede nating pag-usapan yung mga pamahiin natin. Kung paano, maganda yan na topic, kung ano yung mga pamahiin ng mga researchers natin, paano sila makapag-publish. Ganun yung ginagawa ko.
Pwede pa share, sir, kahit isa lang.
Pamahiin? Sige. Ang pamahiin, well, alam din naman nga siguro ito. No? Hindi ako nagsasabi ng Thursday, Friday ng journal. I don't usually do that. Because kapag yung mga associate editors natin, natambakan na sila from Monday to Wednesday, tapos magsasubmit ka pa ng Thursday, Friday, usually hindi na nila babasahin yun. Dadaan lang sila doon sa introduction. Tapos, pagod na sila, and therefore, posible magkaroon ka ng outright desktop rejection. So, usually, submit it on Monday afternoon until Wednesday. You don't submit on Monday morning kasi ang mangyayari niyan ay bumabalik pa lang sila. Oo, nagwo-warm up pa sila. Maraming ganyan na inisip ko. Kaya, kinikilala ko rin yung editor, pinabasa ko yung editorial board, ano yung interest niya, etc., etc. And then I use it in the creation of my cover letter. Because the cover letter is very important. What you cannot manifest in the manuscript itself, you can manifest it in the cover letter. At saka yung mga prescribed mong reviewer. Very important. Yung sabi, sino yung mga reviewers na ayaw mo, ibigay mo na yung pangalan.
Ngayon ko lang nalaman yung Thursday, Friday.
Oo. Usually talaga, huwag ka magsasabitan. Huwag ka rin tayo, kasi naghahabol tayo di ba, ng Thursday, Friday, or even on a weekend na nagsasabit tayo. Huwag natin gagawin. Naranasan ko na yun. Okay. So, akala ko dati hindi totoo, pero mukhang totoo nga siya.
May kayo, sir? May data talaga kayo.
May mga technique. Actually, mapapansin mo tayong mga researchers, pare-pareho tayo na experience. May mga may mga vlog ka kasi may mga vlog na nandiyan na kailan ka pwede mag-submit, kailan hindi, anong oras, etc. Hindi naman masamang maniwala, pero gusto talaga natin ma-publish, di ba?
Can you share yung mga bad experiences na naranasan mo in doing this study?
Bad experiences? Actually, medyo matagal na itong research na to, so hindi ko na siya talaga totally maalala, bad experiences. But I think it is mostly, I would not really say bad, but during the time, it was bad siguro. Kasi halimbawa, anong oras na ako umuwi from the lab, even on during winter, na may blizzard, kailangan pumunta ng lab to work. Siguro yun yung mga bad. Pero now, thinking about it, naging lessons ko na lang sila na you really have to work for your science if you want to share your science. Babalikan ko yan, gusto kong sundutin yung part na yun. Kasi, lagi tayong gumagawa, halimbawa ng mga term paper, technical report. Those tidbits of science can actually be retrofitted in a full-blown research if you just know the skills to make a storyline. So, gawin natin yung mga bagay na pagtrabahuan natin. So, I would not really say na bad experiences yung nangyari sa akin. I would say it's memorable na lang.
And then, at what point po na-realize nyo na pwede nyo na siyang ma-publish?
Because of my supervisor. Kasi hindi naman sasabihin ng supervisor ko na hindi niya ipapasubmit kung hindi talaga siya maganda. So, it went through a lot of internal revision. There was even a time na may gusto siyang ipa-plot. Nandun talaga siya sa likod ko habang ginagawa yun. So, sobrang pressure nun na habang naisip, parang nandun siya sa likod ko, nagpa-plot ako. So, ang hirap ng mga panahon na yun. During the time, it was really so bad na kailangan kong lumabas to take a breath of fresh air because of those things. Pero ngayon naisip ko, it was really for me. So, na para ma-improve yung acting craft, yung writing skills ko. So for me now, all of those things, I can appreciate them and became a more memorable and good experience for me.
And then moving forward po, ano yung plans nyo with this research? Kasi ay kanina
Oh,
nabanggit nyo na pala dinagdagan nyo yung analysis. Pero
yes,
in addition po to that.
alright. Actually, marami nag-branch out na tong research na to. Um, ito yung nagsimula nung interest ko doon sa seasonality of tropical cyclones. So, this is for the winter tropical cyclones. And then I was also able to publish a paper for the spring tropical cyclones, for the summer tropical cyclones, and then eventually for the, yung pinakahuli, yung autumn tropical cyclones. And I found out that in those four papers, they have differing characteristics, seasonal characteristics, and we need to treat each season with deference from each other para ma-solicit natin yung necessary preparedness. We don't just group them into one, cluster them into one season, into one understanding. Bagkus dapat kailangan isa-isa yung understanding natin. And then eventually, I realized that tropical cyclones should not be treated in isolation. Rather, it could actually excite an energy propagating coming from the tropical cyclone all the way to the different parts of the world. Halimbawa, papaliwanag ko. Very exciting yun for me nung na-realize ko siya. So, naalala mo yung sinabi ko kanina na mainit yung karagatan, magkakaroon ka ng evaporation, eventually condensation. That's convection. If you have large convection, those energy, it will go up. So whatever it goes up, whatever goes up, it must come down. Okay? Because of gravity. Yung pagbaba na yon ay posibleng pumunta sa ibang lugar. And it could excite another system in that area. So, bababa siya as a dry condition. Therefore, in the other parts of the world, magiging drier yung condition. Paano? Halimbawa, sa Pilipinas maulan, sa may bandang Japan, sa may bandang Korea, sa may bandang China, going northwards, it is a drier condition. And et cetera, et cetera. So it could create a chain of extreme events. So, and let's say, kapag bumabagyo sa Pilipinas, posible magkaroon ng chain of co-occurring extreme events in the other parts of the world. That's very exciting for me nung na-realize namin yung ganong klase ng processes.
Ayun. So, before we let you go, sir, anong ma-advise nyo sa mga aspiring researchers?
For the aspiring researchers and scientists in the Philippines, unlike yung sinasabi, it is not a race, but rather a journey. Lagi-lagi, may mga pagkakataon na nahihirapan tayo, may mga pagkakataon na gusto na nating sumuko. We have to think na darating at darating din tayo sa puntong yon, makakatapos tayo. If you must crawl, but you really have to move forward. So move forward each day. You have to stick to your core kasi may mga pagkakataon na sobrang hirap niya na. You have to stick to your core, find your core, hold on to that, and eventually, darating panahon, makakatapos ka rin, magagawa mo rin yung iyong research. So it's really, in my case, it's really for the people. I have to do this for the people, science for the people.
Ay, bigla kong naalala, sir. Yung recent na issue ng isang politician na natutulog daw yung mga taga-Pag-asa.
Yung ating Weather Bureau.
Can you
yes.
comment po may mga lapses po ba sa pag-communicate nung or rather, ano yung naging challenges sa pag-forecast nung bagyo na yan?
Okay. Actually, isa ako sa mga nag-draft ng response letter for that legislator. Hello, sir. Kung nanonood pa man si sir sa atin. Magandang hapon po, sir. First and foremost, the Weather Bureau is not sleeping on the job because it is mandated to provide information around the clock. So, ibig sabihin, all of us, from the operations side to the research and development side, and even for the support services, we provide information around the clock. We have to realize that the information background on disaster risk reduction in the Philippines is anchored on the information provider, which is Pag-asa, and then eventually meron kang gatekeeper. Yung gatekeeper natin dyan ay yung halimbawa NDRRMC, LGUs. So they also need to do their job. Dapat hindi rin sila natutulog. So they also need to do their job because they are the gatekeepers for us to reach the end user, which is the people. So lahat tayo science for the people. So no, the Weather Bureau is not sleeping on the job. We are doing our mandated function to support the disaster risk reduction in the country.
Ayan. So hopefully na-clarify din natin yun sa mga audience natin.
Tama,
And then
tama.
lastly, sir, do you have anything to promote po?
Promote. Okay. Well, and first and foremost, kung meron tayong mga meteorology, and then, or any professionals engaged with the allied sciences of meteorology, nandyan ang hydrology, nandyan ang astronomy, geology, like you, geologists, and then meron din tayo, halimbawa you are in a disaster risk reduction office, you can join the Philippine Meteorological Society. So i-click nyo lamang po yung philmetsoc.com. Again, philmetsoc.com. May landing page po doon. Pwede po kayo magpa-member sa Philippine Meteorological Society. So we would like to invite you to join the ranks of the Philippine Meteorological Society and sumama po kayo sa pag-promote ng meteorology and its allied sciences in the country. That's one. And then for our younger listeners, see for example, if you want
kahit
to pursue...
sino lang po pwede mag-join?
Yes, even you. You can join the Philippine Meteorological Society. There are 3 membership classifications: regular, which is obviously sa meteorology talaga. And then you can be an associate member. So yung mga allied sciences natin dyan. And then we have the student members, which is for our younger listeners kung sakali. So marami na tayong student members coming from Mariano Marcos State University, CLSU, etc. And then lastly, yun nga, which leads me to my point, to our younger listeners, if you are interested in meteorology, not exactly with the scholarship that I found years ago, which is SEI naman, di ba? Nag-offer naman si SEI. Meron tayong mga fortunately for you, kasi dati sa amin walang meteorology undergrad eh. Ngayon meron na tayong 4 universities offering meteorology. We have one in Northern Luzon, Mariano Marcos State University in Batak. Another one in Central Luzon State University. In the Bicol region, we have Bicol University. In the Visayas region, we have Visayas State University. And then, upcoming na rin, of course, meron tayong mga targets in Iloilo side. And then, another in the Cagayan de Oro side. Kasi wala tayong Mindanao. So, mag-offer na rin sila. And of course, for graduate programs, we have UP Diliman offering Masters and PhD in Meteorology.
Anong schools po yung target nyo dun sa sa Iloilo?
That is at Iloilo State University of State College of Agriculture. Nakalimutan ko. It's ICSAT. So ngayon ay
nag-offer na Iloilo kasi ako, kaya curious ako.
Baka pwede ka magturo din eventually after. Kung sakali lang naman, no, pwedeng related. Naghanap sila ng mga professors doon. Kasi originally, nagkwento ulit ako na baka naman sumobra yung oras
okay lang,
mo.
Sir.
Okay lang ba? That was in 2008 yata. Around that time. Sabi na rin natin. May 4 universities, ito yung kadalasan dinadaanan ng bagyo. So sila yung nag-offer. Sila yung nag-express ng interest sa CHED, Commission on Higher Education, to accept the challenge of offering BS Meteorology program in the country. And during that time, wala pang recent increase in the occurrences of Christmas typhoons. Kaya wala sa Mindanao. And then now, Xavier University, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Cagayan de Oro, has expressed their interest. Hindi ko alam kung nasaan na yung part na yun. Pero a university in Mindanao has expressed their interest to accept the challenge of offering BS Meteorology.
Ayun. So,
Yeah.
sa mga aspiring students, abangan nyo yung kung may elementary or high school na nanonood dito, abangan nyo yung mga universities na yan.
Oo, dapat nga mas marami. Kasi alam mo po, lagi kong sinasabi sa sa mga kaibigan natin, pag may international conferences, particularly in tropical cyclone, sabi nila they were affected by tropical cyclone. Isa, dalawa lang yun. Again, hindi ko naman sila minamaliit. Pero pag sinabi ko, in the Philippines, we have 19 to 20 tropical cyclones in a year. Gulat sila, really? How could you sleep? Sabi nila, paano ka natutulog? Sabi ko, ganun, kung iisipin mo talaga sila na mas malaliman, baka mabaliw ka na. Kaya sabi ko yung mga Pilipino ang ginagawa ng mga yan, or at least to cope with those extreme events, usually they forget about it, but not the lesson. Okay? Yung mga Filipino, laging handa yung mga yan eh. Pero makakalimutan man nila yung pangalan ng mga bagyo yun, that's okay. But the lesson behind those extreme events, hindi naman nila nakakalimutan. So, ang point ko lang is, those extreme events are happening right in our backyard. So, the best laboratory for studying tropical cyclone is right here in the Philippines. So, I would like to invite you, everyone, especially to our younger listeners, to join our ranks as the future meteorologists in this country.
Ayun. Actually, yan din personally yung kind of frustration ko, sir. Kasi sa field ng geology, for example, ang daming lindol sa Pilipinas. Pero yung mga papers sa Pilipinas tungkol sa mga lindol, hindi ka makakita ng ganun kadami. Nangingibabaw pa rin yung mga ibang countries, which I think dapat leading din ang Philippines pagdating sa mga earthquake studies. Ayun lang. Side ko.
Tama. Tama yan. Ibang topic yun eh. Ang tawag ko doon parachute science. Ang parachute science na kapag may nangyaring extreme event, etong mga, syempre recorded tayo, pero ibang topic yun, no, na yung parachute scientist, whenever there's an extreme event and whenever there's an opportunity for them to study extreme events that are not happening in their country, but they have the funds to study those extreme events, they will fly in here and then study those tropical cyclones and parachute out, fly out, and then publish those papers without even informing us na na-publish nila yung science na yan. Yun yung sabi ko na kailangan nating na mas marami pang scientists sa Pilipinas. And more than that, I think, Paul, appreciation of R&D. We don't just study, we don't just publish papers. It is more on a stepping stone for us to improve our understanding of extreme events, not only hydrometeorological, but of course, nandiyan yung natural hazards natin and geological hazards.
Ayun. So I think madami na kaming napagkwentuhan ni Sir Tasio, and I hope madaming natutunan yung audience natin. Siguro pwede naman naming schedule yung ibang episodes for other discussions.
Tama, oo. Kung kuro-kuro natin pagdating sa interdisciplinary science. Maganda yon, maganda.
Ayun. So thank you very much, Sir Tasio, sa pagbibigay ng inyong oras sa episode natin ngayon. So thank you everyone. Thank you din sa audience sa pakikinig. So see you everyone sa next episode. Thank you po.